My name's Steve Isaacs, and I am the Education Program Manager at Epic Games. At Epic, I focus on working with educators to support them in learning to use and bring our tools into the classroom. But prior to that, I was a classroom teacher for 28 years, and I taught everything I started in special education and then moved into teaching technology courses and ultimately started a game design program and taught game design and development to middle and later in my career, high school students as well. As far as esports goes, about 25 or 30 years ago, my wife and I opened a computer training and gaming center. Initially, it was meant for computer. We did computer camps, we did after school programs, and then in the evenings, we started to have multiplayer gaming. And this was felt kind of new at the time. And we basically opened up in the evenings. Kids would come in and play games on our network. And we didn't really know the impact or what this would turn into, but it became really fascinating because kids would spend a lot of time in our facility. They'd make great friendships. They'd come in, every Friday night for a few hours. Their parents were happy because they had somewhere to be socially that allowed them to also, enjoy time with their friends doing something that they enjoyed. And it really became an amazing community. And we started to see kids have just so much fun competing casually. And at that time, I didn't really know that this was a lot of foreshadowing for what was to come with esports. But then when I started teaching, when I started teaching in the school that I was at that time, I started a gaming club, and then with the idea that we might get into competitive gaming, and then it really kicked off when Chris Aviles, who's another teacher in New Jersey, he was starting a competitive Rocket League team, and my club was more casual at the time. But he gave me a call and he said, hey, can you pull together a team to play Rocket League against my middle school team because there's no one for us to play. So we did, and we started to play each other in matches. We broadcast those matches on Twitch, and other people, especially middle schools who weren't yet really involved in esports, started to pick up on what we were doing and wanted to participate. And before we knew it, we started, a league that was, run on a spreadsheet and, had, us organizing matches and having different teams play each other. And then that grew, and I'm very excited to share that grew into what became Garden State Esports, which is an amazing esports organization in New Jersey. And Chris, is the president, and we founded it together. He's continued to work with Garden State Esports, and they've just created an amazing program with hundreds of schools in New Jersey that participate. And I feel like it all started, especially with us, saying, "Hey, let's just play Rocket League against each other." That's a great question in terms of what esports is and why it's considered sport. So at the heart sort of it is that esports is competitive gaming. And basically, you could go back, 20 years or so with competitive StarCraft and other games that had, large scale competitions, and even, big spectator events. People love to watch like the Super Bowl. Well, people now are watching the League of Legends finals and the Fortnite Championship series and the Rocket League Championship and all of these other sports. So it's become um it's I think it's considered a sport, I think, because of all of the elements that are involved on the, at least on the competitive side. There's all of the elements of teamwork, communication, practice, even the the taking good care of yourself physically, which is important because it's important to be on top of your game if you're competing. Um, and it's very much structured like sports in terms of leagues and competitions and such. But interestingly, there's so much more to it, which also actually is not so different from traditional sports. When you think of sports, you think of you know the spectator portion. So you're watching a sporting event. When you're watching a sporting event, there are broadcasters, there are people that handle all different facets of the event planning, coaching, all of those things. And those are all very important parts of esports as well. And and we've taken it a step further, certainly in Scholastic, in really trying to look at all of the different roles that people can play in esports in order to create the full ecosystem of people who are interested and passionate about games and gaming and competitive gaming can participate, even if they're not the one who's playing. And again, that's very similar to traditional sports, right? Like when you think of a professional basketball team, there are so many people that are involved behind the scenes that aren't even the players. And we've, created the same, ecosystem around esports for sure. So esports and game-based learning are definitely intertwined, but also somewhat separate. I'll start with when I think of game-based learning, I think of students learning from a game experience, and that takes a number of different forms. Like in one sense, if you're playing a game to learn a content area, there's a lot of research and examples of games like Civilization, where you're learning a lot about history, you're learning about different civilizations, you're learning about how they function and how they worked together and the technology that developed and such. So you're learning a lot about history in these civilizations, but you're learning it in a very experiential way by playing a game. The same applies for games like Oregon Trail, which taught about westward expansion, and that goes back so long, that game. But then something happened a number of years ago when games like Minecraft came to be, is that we sort of shifted, I say we shifted the narrative, and now instead of games as necessarily being the where students are learning the content from the games, that brought us to a point where these sandbox games allowed us to embrace the students as creators of content. So now all of a sudden, kids are creating anything they could imagine, but using this game technology as their slate. So like when we think of kids, often do a project in PowerPoint, or they do a like a brochure, or some kind of project, where they're meeting certain learning objectives by creating something, right? So if they're creating a brochure or a PowerPoint presentation, that's definitely one way for them to express their knowledge. If they're using something like Minecraft or Fortnite Creative, they can do the same thing and still meet those learning objectives, only their creation is happening with something they're passionate and excited about. So in that case, like I say, it's changed from us necessarily just learning about history by playing a game that's teaching us history. Now students are creating content that is demonstrating their learning, but also creates immersive and engaging experiences for them to share with their peers. So we also get this added benefit that if I create something in Minecraft or Fortnite Creative, um, that could then be experienced by others in the class as a much more interesting way, maybe to learn the content I'm trying to share versus, again, like a brochure that you would read with a few pictures or a PowerPoint presentation that I would present. They're all valid ways to teach and learn, but games, I think, tap into that engagement in students. And it also, sort of allows us to embrace their expertise. Often kids come to us, they already have skills in these areas. When we now allow them to take something they're comfortable with and use it as a means of expression, I think that's really exciting. And then your question also about why like esports has, become very well adopted in education and Scholastic. There are a number of factors there too. One is that from the competitive and just the extracurricular, if you want to call it, aspect, we're allowing kids that have this passion for games to, again, sort of demonstrate something that they're good at and that they're passionate about. A lot of the times we've found with kids with esports, not always, but a lot of the times, these are kids that might be really great at video games. Maybe they're not going to be the star football player, or maybe that's not where they connect with school, is through athletics, traditionally. But yet this gives them an opportunity to be, you know, to really shine and become more of a part of the school community. And that's really important for kids. I think we've often lost, certain kids that don't feel that home school community or connection, you know, don't really engage as much in school activities and such. And then when we take it further and we say, hey, let's really create a whole ecosystem around that, and we think very intentionally about the different roles within that, we create other opportunities for students. So, I had mentioned before broadcasting, shoutcasting or broadcasting in esports is the person who might watch the game and be you know broadcasting it to an audience, and then their expertise comes in because they might again not be the star player, but they know a lot about the game, and now they can talk about that and really show their skills. And similarly, we've embraced other opportunities, like whether it be marketing and advertising or website design or even game design, where kids start having an opportunity to create games that might be a game we then compete in. There's a program in Australia that Bron Stuckey uh, runs, and I'm drawing a little blank on the name, but it's a girls who game or girls esports program. And one thing I love about what they do is part of it is the game design, and the students in the program create games, and then they all vote on which student game they want to use as the game they then compete in. And I think that's a tremendous way to say, hey, now these students who are creating the games are actually creating the game that they're going to compete in. And that, brings both worlds together as well. So I just think there are so many um, benefits, to bringing this into a scholastic environment, especially if we see the bigger picture of all of the possibilities and all of the different students that we could include in the process. So so what I had mentioned before about, especially when we talk about that content creation piece, when we use that game technology for students to create content, now you can bring that into any content area. So if you're doing a project in social studies, in fact, you know there's, for both Minecraft and Fortnite Creative, there are a number of activities or lesson plans that focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, this provides students with a real problem, but they might solve that problem in a project-based learning environment using, you know, game technology, which gives them this opportunity, like if it's Fortnite Creative or Minecraft, to really, you know, um, they're still doing the research on the project and everything they need to do, but now they're showing their solution through this means of my cat. They're showing their solution through their creation, and I think that's really remarkable when we give kids that opportunity. So that's one way, and then also with integrating games in other ways, to teach concepts. I mean, I think that's just incredibly valuable. My best experiences in school as a student were when there happened to be, a game involved. Like I learned a lot about the stock market because my economics teacher had us play a stock market simulation game. It wasn't with technology. We everything was handwritten before spreadsheets and all, but we were given a an amount of money that we were allowed to invest. We invested it. We did trades and we bought new stocks and everything. And I was so engaged in that I learned so much. So, the same applies here with you know, uh, whether it be considered a game or a simulation or what. I think when we allow for us to have experiences that guide the learning, that really helps. And then again, that piece of, I think it's so important for kids to be creating their own content, because these are the jobs that are in high demand too, is using this technology to in many different industries. So I think we get to leverage that as well. Yeah, that's the great question, right? I'll start with something that I find very interesting. when I talked about the story about, when Chris Aviles and I, kind of started, that was in a time when you had to kind of really pitch all the reasons why you felt esports were valuable. We did that very effectively, I think. We talked about all these different opportunities that could come out of that, which might even be a big part of why, we took that focus, is we wanted to show, hey, there is so much to be learned and gained. It's definitely worth mentioning that the gaming industry is huge. It is. I, I heard a statistic recently. It's 3 times bigger than both the movie and there was another industry. But I mean, talking about two different other huge industries that gaming is, become 3 times as large as. So we can't ignore the fact that there's tremendous opportunities and value even from an economic standpoint. I mean, this talks about what our society is interested in, right? But what was interesting is we used to, it was we'd have so many conversations with other educators who were asking for strategies of talking to the different stakeholders. Like we would, how do you talk to your board of education? How do you talk to the parents? How do you get them on board? The interesting thing is there's been a complete shift in that. Now I'm starting to find that every school, every superintendent is now starting to understand, at least in the United States, the need to have, or the desire that they feel they need to have, an esports program. So now, instead of it being the one teacher who really wanted to see this happen, now it's coming from the other side of the administration that are even now trying to recruit people that can support an esports program in their school. So I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress in that way. I don't know if that's international, but I would think it would have to be, because you look at different countries and how large the gaming and esports markets are. That tells a lot, right? I mean, really, it in school, I think our role is to prepare students for what the future is. And if this is, growing at this rate, then those are a lot of the opportunities we need to prepare our students for. So I think that helped. Another thing that helped a lot was when you started to be able to share with the stakeholders that there were scholarship opportunities for students. All of a sudden, they were getting a full ride to go to college to play competitive esports. I mean, again, that shows that if on the college level it's valued on that level, then that helped a lot too. So I think we started with a lot of very like grassroots enthusiasm and excitement among people who saw this as an opportunity, but then it has come around. So I feel like we're not in the position where we're having to convince people as much anymore, which I think is wonderful. Um, however, if there is that need, I think it is worth, noting that we're trying to also support students in a way in school where we're understanding the importance of balance. We're understanding the fact that your academics still has to be a focus. In fact, many programs, just like athletic programs, if you don't keep up a certain level of grades, you might not be able to participate. If you, so things like that. And also, there's a lot of statistics now showing that in some communities, when students have had the opportunity to participate in esports, they've also, started to show better attendance in school, better connection with school. So there's so many different things, I think, that you could take it from so many different angles, whether it be the true part about, hey, we're really creating opportunities and pathways for careers, but we're also connecting with students in a place that's meaningful to them. We're creating opportunities for them to be part of something, and we're also, having them demonstrate better participation in school as a result. So I think we've really come way past the needing to convince phase to see people kind of starting to understand that value. Uh, I believe that when you start to look at the different industries that are utilizing, let's say, interactive 3D and real time rendering or real time technology, that is starting to demonstrate that here, like what happened a while ago is these game engines like Unreal Engine and Unity, they were used primarily to make games. Then other people started using these tools and realizing all of the other, um, very worthwhile things they could do in their industry. So like people in advertising would start to realize that, wait, I can now use this technology to make the workflow in advertising more efficient. I can film a commercial and change out one part of it, and all of a sudden, I have this second version of the commercial. Or if something's not quite right, I can change it, like a lot easier than if they had to have everything filmed with actors and then refilm and things like that. That's just one example. So virtual production and TV and film is using this technology extensively. um, Automotive, like all of these different industries have started to do a lot of what they're doing with this technology. So I think from a school standpoint, we can take this hook of like kids are interested in games and game development and this technology, get them the skills, and then that just opens up all these opportunities for them that again don't have to be in the game industry at all. So, and also like for as an example, when you think of like Fortnite happens to be built on in Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine is one of the industry's standard game development tools, virtual production tools, and all these other things. So when kids kind of say, "Ooh, if that was built in Unreal Engine, now I want to learn Unreal Engine so I can do things like that." But again, then they also learn other things. And for kids that are interested in other areas, like if they're interested in animation, that's the area they can focus on. If they're interested in sound engineering, they can focus on that. So it just opens up a whole lot of different possibilities. It just happens to be that the technology is that. And now another thing that's really worth mentioning is that there's a lot of talk lately about the metaverse. And the metaverse, everybody who speaks about the metaverse talks about the fact that it is being built on game technology. So now we think about the economics involved in what these immersive experiences are going to be, which aren't necessarily games, but are built with this technology. So, I think it just continues to demonstrate how just having, the demand for jobs using this type of technology helps to make us understand why it's valuable for kids to get started with this in school and come out prepared for that. Well, so that's a great question. So, yes. So there are Fortnite experiences like they had Travis Scott performed a concert inside Fortnite that had, I think it was something like 10 million people viewing that concert. So they were all in an interactive experience viewing that, from their computer or their phone or their, Nintendo Switch or Xbox or PlayStation. They were in a metaverse experience, right? There are so many things like that. Like with the Super Bowl, they created a whole lobby area that you could interact with and do all sorts of neat things and activities. And again, it was like you were experiencing something, not just playing Fortnite per se. So Fortnite's being seen as one of the platforms that I consider it right now like a prototype of the metaverse, because there's a lot of things that have to happen for it to be truly what we're talking about with the metaverse. But the other side of that is that Fortnite creative mode and like Unreal Engine, those are tools, and and Minecraft and Roblox are tools that allow students to create experiences that are, essentially metaverse experiences. And again, getting that experience now, just think of where they'll be when they get out of school. Yeah, I think we're positioning them to be instrumental in the whole process. Early on in the Minecraft days, when Minecraft was starting to be used in schools, there were a lot of teachers who were taking it upon themselves to create these experiences for students. Now, to your question, whether or not they were engaging or not would certainly depend on a lot of things, right? In one case, there was somebody, drawing a little blank on his name, but he created something called the World of Humanities in Minecraft, and it was a tremendous Minecraft world that taught students about humanities across, many different areas in the world. So the interesting thing there is that I think it was an amazing experience. So I think it was engaging for students, but I also think it was the type of thing that not many teachers are going to be able to put the kind of time into building that whole world. That's why I like to bring it back to the students as the creators. I'd love to see something like that World of Humanities idea, kind of resurfaced, where each group of students are creating a part of that, and then that becomes the whole immersive experience. And then it would both come from the students and that. Um, the, Another aspect of the question you asked, I think we think a lot about, um, you know, let's say when a lot of the games that are made for education that are still trying to be considered game-based learning, I think a lot of them fall short because, I think to the point that you were making is that um, they're not often engaging for students, but rather they're, you know, meant to teach something, and a lot gets lost when we don't really either take into account the true engagement, or we don't, you know, even understand, what our students are going to find, engaging and worthwhile. Um, so I think there's a mix there. I think there are some opportunities that can be. I think, but again, I think that when we leverage that technology to have students creating, I think we're just uh, creating a much better environment in terms of creativity in students, and I think that's so important. And but not to knock the fact, if there are build teams and such in Fortnite and Minecraft that are creating amazing educational experiences that are worthwhile. So I think there's probably a mix. And I think there are different people who see that differently. Like, in other words, do I want to teach math in Minecraft, and therefore do I want to create a world that teaches a math concept so I have the kids experiencing it in Minecraft? Sometimes that could be very effective. Um, but then there's that other side of, do I want kids to do research and show me what they understand about a topic? Then I'd rather put them in the seat of the creator. That It's a great question when it comes to barriers to adoption. So some of the challenges that we definitely have are whether or not we have the technology to support the tools that we want kids to be learning. Um, you know, there are a lot of schools moved very much into use of Chromebooks, as a big solution for the need for every student to have a device. Much of the higher end software that I would really like to see students learning might not run on that. So that's one point. Another very important point is student privacy and how schools handle whether students can create accounts in certain environments. So that sometimes presents a barrier, like a school might need, something to be signed to indicate um, that, how student privacy is handled, and sometimes that becomes a challenge. And then there's certainly also the part about, you know, teachers not being comfortable maybe bringing this technology in. So, with we think of like Minecraft is being used very widely in schools now. I remember when, it was just a small number of teachers who were, the real interested ones, the ones who liked games and all of that, that were bringing Minecraft in. But now it's being adopted by teachers who never would have thought they would have brought a game in. So it takes a long time sometimes for us to really get over that hurdle, and really, so that needs a lot of training and professional development, needs a lot of support. So I think there's that, and then there's also there's still the challenge and mindset sometimes about thinking or not being sure where games fit in. So there are plenty of things, but I am very pleased to see the level of adoption of all of these tools, and that teachers are more and more willing and interested. And I think, we start to realize that it's so important to students, and this is, they speak a lot about meeting the kids where they are. I mean, that's valuable, and engaging them in something that they have an affinity for. And I think in some ways, COVID actually, in an interesting way, helped push that a little further because we were looking for ways to engage students during that time. And some teachers became much more open-minded to saying, hey, if this is something that'll, allow us to, to really meet the needs of our students and such at this time, maybe this is the time to start, So I think we saw a lot of that as well. Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about industry standard tools, I mean, these are tools that, people are using in a variety of these different industries. So, like something like Unreal Engine or Fortnite Creative or Twinmotion or Unity or, all these different tools have system requirements that, not all schools are meeting or have that technology. Now, that's where it gets interesting too, because we could bring the conversation a little back to esports. One of the things, the esports programs tend to have higher end technology because they need it for gaming. Gaming often kind of drives the need for higher end technology. So one of the things that has been interesting over the years, like I said, early on, when I was teaching game design in the middle school, I had to really push for what technology I needed in order to run the software that I wanted my students to use. So in my case, it was interesting. They supported that because there was the curriculum and education need. And then because I had that technology, it was easy for me to start a gaming and esports club because I had the technology. Now we're coming almost from the other side where, um, like I said, so many schools feel the need to have the esports program, so they're at least outfitting a lab or some environment to support that. So now I'm actually speaking to a lot of teachers to say, hey, if you have this high end technology for esports, why don't we, let me help you find other educational uses for that. And that's where it comes in to bring these tools in to so those programs sometimes become a good fit because those teachers might be more open-minded and more forward thinking, but also they actually have that technology. So and we, like a lot of the tools that I work with teachers with, the tool itself, there's no cost for licensing. The resources we provide, there's no cost for, and even training we can provide. So it's like we have all this great opportunity there, but if the school doesn't have the adequate technology, that's where we run into a problem. And hopefully things will change because we're moving into a time also with the potential for virtual machines or cloud computing where the powerful computing power could be not on the device I'm using, but somewhere else. But we still have a long way to go there in terms of, cost and, you know, making sure the technology is smooth and those sorts of things. But my hope is that we get to a point where that's no longer our biggest obstacle. So first off, I'm very excited to be coming to Singapore and honored to be asked to be one of the presenters. Um, I am very passionate about thinking ahead about the metaverse and what is involved in that. And you know, without without revealing too much about my presentation, I feel that some of the things we talked about today talk about how our students are the ones that are experiencing what the metaverse is going to be, or the at least the early stages of it. They're also, many of them, learning to be creators of content, and I think that we are in this unique position to support students in learning these tools because I truly believe they're the ones that are both are going to be creating much of this metaverse to come, but also they're the ones with more of the insight about what these experiences are like. So it's like, why not really embrace what our students experience and know and are experts in, and now create opportunities for them to drive that forward.